Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of your favorite mental health podcast. It's You, Me, Empathy. And this is me, Known Wells, the creator and host of this podcast and the founder of the Feely Human Collective. Thanks for being here. This is episode 163 on family dysfunction and boundaries with my guest, Nikki Eisenhauer. Nikki is a therapist. She's a life coach. She is a podcaster. Her podcast is called Emotional Badass. It's wonderful. And this conversation is wonderful. I learned so much. Nikki is a light. She is full of so much wisdom. And her story is incredible. I really enjoyed this conversation. We get into the real core of dysfunction in families and letting go of the expectation of being accepted by anyone but ourselves. The beauty of being an emotional badass. And we talk about boundaries galore. So many boundaries. Trigger warning for this episode. Sexual abuse is mentioned. Incest is mentioned in this episode briefly. So just a fair weather warning there. But it's a wonderful episode. I really appreciated it, and I really just so value Nikki and the work that she's doing with her psychotherapy, her life coaching, and her podcast, Emotional Badass. I think you're going to love this chat. Before we get to it, though, I wanted to remind you that I am on Patreon. It's at patreon.com/feelyhuman if you'd like to support this podcast and the work that I do with Feely Human and me, your favorite Feely boy. You can at patreon.com/feelyhuman. For $5 a month, you get a bonus episode. And this month's episode, out in a couple of days, is about my sobriety, my recent sobriety. About 26 days in at this point. And I chatted with my friend Danae, who's a therapist and who's also a sober person, about sobriety and what that means to her and what that has meant to me so far. And it's a really rich and vulnerable conversation. Again, for $5 a month, you can get bonus episodes, and that is one of them out in a couple of days. I also wanted to shout out recent Patreon supporters, Sarah of the Kinda Okay Feelcast. I just recorded with Sarah recently for her podcast. She's wonderful and sweet and so kind and very talented artist. Thank you, Sarah, for being a supporter. Christina Kelly, thank you. I don't know you personally, but thank you. You have a wonderful heart, and I'm so grateful you're here. I'm so grateful you're a Feely Human. And I think I shouted out Kate and Brooke, but I'm going to do it again. Kate Flanders, forthcoming guest on the podcast, has a book, Adventures in Opting Out. Wonderful, wonderful person. Can't wait to hike with you, Kate. And Brooke Baldwin, thank you for being a Feely Human. Thank you for the support. I'm so encouraged by all of this support. I love it. Thank you. It really jazzes me. And I tell this to you, Patreon supporters, like I please, lean on me. Please, if you have ideas for like bonus content, let me know. I'm all for it. So, again, thank you. And if you want to support me and this podcast, go to patreon.com/feelyhuman. And a non-financial way to support me is to leave a rating and review of the show in Apple Podcasts. If you haven't done that, what is going on? I know this 2020 has been a whirlwind, but it just takes a couple minutes. And I'm not shaming you. I understand. I listen to podcasts and I forget to leave reviews, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm getting so much value out of this. So this is just a little nudge and a reminder. So if you want to leave a rating and review for You, Me, Empathy in Apple Podcasts, I would love it if you did that. But if not, if it's too much, I understand that too. I love you regardless. You're listening, and I love you. I guess the last thing I will say is, it's hard to feel your feelings, but it is crucial, right? It is something we need to do as humans. And I get it. I understand that, I know for me, I was in a place in my life where the things that were survival tools eventually hurt me and kept me from feeling my feelings and boxed in those feelings, right? So I have compassion for those tools, the survival tools, right? And at the same time, I can understand and see that they hurt me and can explore that and maybe lean further into the discomfort and to the gray and to understand that feeling our feelings is everything. Feeling our feelings is about sitting with them and discerning what they mean and discerning even if they're true, discerning even if they're ours. They could be someone else's, right? As sensitive people, we take on the feelings of others sometimes, the feelings of the world. And, I know if you're listening to this, you're probably a feely human. You probably lean toward feelings. You probably lean toward sensitivity, and that is a superpower. It is your superpower. Wear that cape proudly. Feel those feelings. I'm proud of you. And thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, and let's get to episode 163 on family, dysfunction, and boundaries with Nikki Eisenhauer. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights and the darks we face as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm feeling very emotional because I'm here with life coach, psychotherapist, and creator of the Emotional Badass podcast and Emotional Badass her damn self, Nikki Eisenhauer. Hello, Nikki.
Hello. Nice to see you. Well, nice to meet you and talk with you. I can't see you right now, but nice to see you.
Yeah. Happy to have you here, friend.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get right into it. So we always kick off the show with like an emotional check-in. How are you feeling?
I'm excited and I'm feeling very grateful this morning. I was reflecting on that right before our talk, that I feel very, very grateful to be where I am in my journey.
Oh, that's nice. What's part of that? Like what are the components of that gratitude, do you think?
Part of that is that I'm in the tail end of teaching a course that I teach once a year. This is my 5th year teaching my Big Boundaries course. And I just finished up the bulk of teaching that group of people. And it always takes me to a place of how far I've come and how I'll never be done with this healing and growth work, but how far I've come that I can weather sort of the waves that life throws with more grounded stability than my younger self knew how to do. And I found that super useful in this craziest year of all of our lives. And I feel so blessed and grateful to be at a point in my career where I found a way to use my voice to connect with people, because that's why I did the podcast. I wanted to get out from kind of behind the chair of one-on-one work with people and be able to share more about what it is to kind of get through your pain and get all the way to the other side of it. I think we wind up seeing a lot of healers and gurus and spiritual teachers that are sort of on the other side of their pain, or they've done the bulk of their work, or at least it seems that way to those of us that are watching. And I don't know that we get a lot of intimate sharing from people that really show like the struggle and the process as they're going through. And I've hoped for a long time that my story can be one of showing people that you can get kind of all the way through to the other side. And when you do, it doesn't mean life isn't going to throw waves of pain or hurt or grief at us, but that we can flow over those things with more grace for ourselves, more grace for our human process. And that's what makes life easier. I don't know that life is ever going to make itself easier for me, but I know that by me figuring out how to flow around things like water, that's what makes life easier for me. I want to be able to show people more of that.
Yeah, I love that. I feel the same way. And I love the water analogy. It's because lately, I mean, I wonder if you can relate to this. Lately, I have been feeling a lot of just kind of maybe there's a little acceptance in there. A lot of like embracing of the unknown, right? So lately I've been having a lot of just weird physical ailments and just abnormalities that doctors can't figure out. And that's kind of like been the norm for me. And I the first time in my life, and I'm about 40, the first time in my life, I am at a place where I can look at that and allow myself to just kind of understand that, like, hey, maybe known that this isn't a sign of, looming heart failure. Maybe it's just a weird thing that is unknown and it's a mystery, and embrace the wonder of this pale blue dot. Like that's kind of how I'm looking at it, as opposed to like maybe a couple of years ago, me would have been just like Googling the shit out of high estrogen, heart failure, you're going to die, cancer, whatever, Can you relate to that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can relate to that. I think that's, for me, that's a big failing in our American education system, that we don't value really teaching our people or ourselves how to weather life's storms. So I think as a collective, our American way of processing right now is very worst case scenario.
Right.
No matter what pops up. Ultimate anxiety. Like we shoot everything through the ultimate fear lens. And we don't really teach our people as a collective how to balance that out and how to pull back and go, actually, if things could be the worst, there's also a possibility that this could be the best diagnosis for me, or this could actually be an easy thing. It doesn't have to be the worst case scenario.
Right.
I did an episode recently on using your imagination with more integrity. So, because we're using our imaginations to scare the hell out of ourselves. and it's not useful. It's not useful, but we're not taught that. So it's very beautiful to me, but it's also sad that so many of us walk this seeker's path to learn as if it's some kind of secret magic of acceptance. Most people in the world, I think most people in our American society don't understand that acceptance doesn't mean I agree with what's happening or I'm okay with it. It's I accept it because I've learned enough to know that fighting this is not valuable. It's not a good use of my energy. There's nothing to fight. It just is. So I don't have to fight it. Like, that's the freedom of acceptance. That's what I hear in your share, that in accepting freely, this is where I am. You don't have to fight what's going on. You just have to move through what's going on.
Right. I think what you said is very important in regards to the social structures we live in as a society, where there is this really damaging ignorance or ignoring of or repressing of the in-between, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have this, it's either win or loss, or it's either like, let's get to the finish line, where and in the meanwhile, we're like skipping over all of this wonder. It may be like uncomfortable wonder, but it's wonder nonetheless, where we can take time to just be. We can take time to just kind of sit and look and be curious. And that's ultimately why I do this podcast, is to allow others to see that beauty in just kind of being with things, because so much in life, as you know, Nikki, like working in the medical field, working, just being a human on this planet, like, there is so much that tells us we need to like keep going and finish this thing and get through it, right? Get through it faster, or do it, crush it, or whatever it may be. Like, you know what I mean?
Like being goal oriented to a fault. Like,
Right.
we're so goal oriented that we want to get to the destination, that we really have, I think, accidentally devalued the journey.
Yeah.
And there's
exactly.
so much for us on the journey to show us who we are, to show us our growth edge. When we hit those uncomfortable points, that discomfort, it's not there to screw with us. It's not there to make our lives miserable. It's there as an offering to say, hey, what might I learn from this? And I get to choose how I meet this struggle in my life, especially when I don't like the struggle that's happening. It's easy to be sort of mindful and evolved when things are flowing and going the way that we want. But the real test of that mindful work, that commitment to being grounded, that commitment to letting go of anxiety and moving more towards our intuitive selves instead of being so run by our anxious selves, that's available to us when we lean into that discomfort instead of go, oh no, I must fix this. I shouldn't feel this way. I need to fly into action. I want to do something. Like, anxiety just wants us doing and doing and doing. We don't know how much, we don't know so much how to sit back and just be and learn and evolve through the experience. We fight the experience.
Yeah. How are you managing some of these feelings and thoughts and anxieties at a time where, this world, let's just talk about the US, like, it's very divided, right? Like, it's very divisive. There's, we're just
toxic.
past.
I would use the word toxic.
Toxic. It's very toxic. We're living in a world where 70 million people voted for Trump. Let's just be clear about that. How are you doing with that stuff?
Well, I think my whole life has prepared me for this year. I'm an incest survivor. I grew up and put my adopted dad in prison. And from this year's experience, looking back on my life, I can see that my whole life has been, whether I liked it or not, about confronting what other people don't want to confront. So I think that has really led me to be able to manage more of myself and the energies of this year. Based on what we just said, how have I handled this year? Really grounding myself in what I see as my own reality for the world. This is my own lens. It's not that my way is right. It is what I have found works best for me and for this weird thing we have as life. But I ground myself in a real strong reality within myself that I have a human part and I have a spiritual part. My spiritual part knows very well that me and everyone else is doing the very best that they can. And the best that they can is often like not very awesome. Like the best my mother could do for me is marry a known pedophile. She knew that he was accused of molesting children when she married him. That's my mother's best. That's tragic. For me, that's tragic for her. Human beings, our best might not be very, very awesome, like right now in this modern age. But because I can ground myself in my spiritual belief that, hey, I'm a spiritual being and I'm also a human being, I think it helps me navigate the world more. That I can look at other people, and instead of growing fear or growing anger or growing resentment or growing more divisive feelings, to be able to put that down and really say, wow, people are scared all around. People vote through their own fears and their own limitations. And I'm in fantastic, giant acceptance of that. So it doesn't rile me. I am just in acceptance that there is a lot of pain. There is a lot of lack of critical thinking. There's a lot of lack of empathy. We're growing more narcissism than ever before. This is being studied increasingly, and it makes sense. We don't need 50 studies to prove that to us. We've had narcissism voted in. We see narcissism in big business kind of rising to the top. There's a lot of things that are cutthroat in our society that are me, 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 instead of, let's make some healthy decisions for all. And I can do me without hurting you. We're not really teaching those things. So I think by grounding myself in just this real grounded reality of course, I'm going to see human beings, especially when they're in fear, whatever their fears are, even when they're very different than my fears, we're going to see the worst behavior. Fear is not the lens that fear is a lens that when we make our choices through it, things get really, really wonky. So as a personal rule for myself in my life, I try very hard to make decisions from a grounded, what seems like the best move from the information I have in front of me. Knowing that it's between the black and white of all or nothing, I can't make decisions that are 100% safe. Can't do it. So being able to really embody in every moment of my life, every decision, every step that I take, every interaction that I have with other humans, directly and indirectly, to be grounded in that there's a human part and there's a spiritual part. And I can really understand from my spiritual parts when other people are acting from their own limitations. And that way of processing is for me. It's not to excuse other people's bad behavior. It's to keep my body calm. It's to keep my nervous system in a non-triggered, grounded space and energy. Does that answer your question?
It does so, yeah. Well, beautifully. Thank you. Is that like in that space, is that where, for yourself, is that where boundaries come in?
So many boundaries. People start my boundaries course really, I think, thinking that boundaries are, I'm going to wag my finger in somebody else's face and tell them what the line is. And that is not healthy boundaries work. Healthy boundaries, I do this in my course. I teach it for 6 weeks every year. And the first few weeks, what we're going over is that our boundaries are actually our own emotional boundaries. Okay? If I don't have the part of me that's wounded, the part of me that's scared, if I don't know that part very well, that part is going to lash out and get messy. So I have to know that part of myself like really, really, really well to be able to walk a path where I'm not scaring myself. That's a boundary with myself. Right. The world, especially with this media cycle that we're on, that was very different than when I was a kid. I just turned 40 this year, so we're very similar in age. The easiest thing in the world right now is to get scared about all kinds of things. But we know from science, we know that when our human bodies are in fear, we're not supposed to think. Because if you're chasing me with bricks to beat me up, My system is so awesome, this awesome human system that I have. It's made to not think, because if I stop and think when I'm triggered, I'm going to stop and go, why is known chasing me with these bricks? And then you're going to clobber me with a brick. So my system is designed, every human being's is, to go into fight or flight or freeze, so that if you're chasing me with bricks, I can run and I don't think. Or if you catch me, that I can fight for my life without my thoughts really slowing me down. That's why our breath increases and gets more shallow at the top of our chest than a deep, full belly breath. That's what helps our parts of our nervous system turn on so that we can act for ourselves and defend. But that's our caveman system. That was there so that if you and I were raising a family together, you could go off and hunt. That's part of why a male's brain is more linear. And more of a female's brain is more like a web, because we'd stay back in the cave and we'd watch for predators. We'd nurse the babies. We'd gather berries. We'd gather wood for the fire. We'd tend the fire. We'd watch the skies for the weather. So we're learning how to manage all of these things as human beings. And then inside of ourselves, and all the boundaries that takes to deal with the parts of ourselves that are very old. You know, we're operating on very old hardware in this modern time. I don't know that we're meant to take in as much information as we're taking in. In fact, I know we're not supposed to. You know, we developed being able to pay attention to our very small tribe, not to what was happening on the other side of the world. So without some emotional boundaries inside of myself that says, enough, put the phone down. That's a very basic boundary most of us don't practice. Even those of us that are super mindful struggle to really put the phone down enough. I put it down. I don't know that I put it down enough. So boundaries work really starts for me with, where do I need my own boundaries? And if my system is getting triggered and activated, how is that possibly a good thing for me or the world? So in my work with people individually, and if you listen to my podcast, you can hear it in message after message. It's about getting really straight with ourselves and making sure our own side of the street is clean and clear. I'm a strong believer that advocacy is not the same thing as anger. And I think that's a very, very tricky message that's being put out there right now. That if you're an advocate, you must be angry and lashing out. If you're not really an advocate. I think that message is going out there a lot between the lines. I think it's a really destructive message. I'm an advocate in my heart, very separate from my anger. Because when I'm angry, my nervous system is going to get activated and my best thinking won't show up. So it's very important to me as a practicing healing person in the world, for myself and with other people, that I'm practicing that from a real grounded place of not mistaking my anger for advocacy and working to separate those. Because if I'm in my anger, I don't have my best thinking. And that is dangerous on an individual level and as a society. And that's probably a radical idea right now that might get a lot of pushback, because we're seeing like younger people who want their anger justified. I had people push back on an Alan Watts quote recently that we put up for the post. It was Alan Watts saying a very famous quote about no amount of anxiety changes things. And people lashed back angry. Oh, that sounds like someone who has nothing to be anxious about. People want their anxiety validated. They want their anger validated. I am a solution-focused practitioner. And that kind of like anger doesn't really lead us to solution. But for most people, anger is the very first thing, since we don't teach boundaries when we're in second grade and fifth grade and ninth grade. Since we don't teach boundaries, anger is the very first thing that tends to push us over the edge, that starts to give us some permission to have boundaries. Most of us do not start boundaries work until we're so angry and depleted and fed up. We're really at an effort point. And then we start to do some boundaries work. So for a lot of people, we're very confused about, anger being our boundaries or anger being our advocacy. But anger is the top layer. It's the layer that if we're wild animals in the woods and you're wounded, animals are programmed to not show that woundedness. They show anger, they snarl. Anybody who's ever witnessed a dog get hit by a car, that dog is going to snarl, not just because they're in pain, but they're liable to bite you when you try to help them and pick them up because they are in fight. Because their nervous system is saying, I am wounded, I must defend myself. So that dog is not thinking, this is my protective owner that I love and trust who's bringing me to safety. That dog's brain is unable to think, and we are no different. So when we peel back that anger layer, which is protective, there's always something more vulnerable underneath, and that's really where we do the work. Not inside of the anger. We have to work to get beneath the anger to see what's really there. And for most of us, we're terrified, or we're embarrassed, or we're ashamed, or we're vulnerable and we don't know what to do with that, or we feel worthless, or we're seeking approval because we feel like a wounded little kid instead of like a full-fledged adult in our adultness. We feel like imposter adults. So it's very, very important to me to work with myself continuously because life is never going to stop inviting me to get angry.
Right.
And it's never going to stop inviting me to feel like the victim either. So working to get around these real emotional trappings so that we can really do the healthy healing work at hand as individuals and as a society, I think is really, really important. And we don't get people onto our side or onto a healthiness train by shaming them.
Right. I appreciate all of that. There's there's a lot of like very understandable science there that you're explaining, and I understand it and I get it and it makes sense. And I also I feel for, the anger of, Black people right now, or Black women right now who are experiencing loss and trauma and, and all of that. And I hear you. So I on one hand, I'm like, yes, of course. Like, I know that my anxiety or my anger is not going to help anyone. And at the same time, I'm like, well, of course they're angry. Of course, that makes 100% sense, right? So how do you manage that?
Empathizing is not the same as being upset.
Right.
So and this is part of what therapists are taught through school, because so we're kind of I think maybe the only people that get any kind of taste of this kind of direct teaching. So we have to, as therapists, we have to be able to empathize without carrying the emotional load. Does that make sense the way that I'm saying it?
Yeah.
So from those muscles, I think I've been able to sort of handle the modern world better from taking those muscles further. It's a practice that a therapist has to have to not burn out. And so the general public, do you feel like you're burning out? There's a certain compassion fatigue that therapists are taught about that the world is at risk of feeling if they don't have some tools to really manage the amount of emotion and the amount of pain that's in the world. So empathizing and being able to hold space for somebody's pain and having the energy to actually do the work to advocate, to move the needle forward for any of these issues, to me requires not being bogged down by the pain of others. So empathizing with others' pain and knowing that people have a right to their feelings, absolutely, 100%. But me jumping on to feel somebody else's pain, especially as an empath, I'm an empath, that will put me in a state of fatigue. And then I can't go out there to do the good work. So it's a commitment to how messy being a human is, that none of this stuff will get tucked into neat little boxes the way that we want.
Yeah.
Even when we're sitting I know they can't go in neat little boxes. We want that because it's neater. All of this would be easier if we could tuck it into the nice little boxes. But
it's too overwhelming otherwise, right?
Totally. So I think that's kind of part of what I represent or hope that I do, is that we can absolutely empathize. We need to. But if I give too much of my upsetness, if I let my physical system get upset and drained, then I can't get there Monday morning to do the good work. So it's a balancing. And when I get angry, I have tools in my tool bag to be able to get that anger out so that it doesn't drain me over hours and days and months and years and a lifetime.
Right.
And since we don't teach those things, we don't seem to value as a society real, true emotional education. The average person doesn't know how to discharge their anger. So I do lots of things. I'm a self-care practitioner. So I get physical a lot in my body to work anger, to work sadness, to work disappointment from my human part out of the body. I practice a faith from my spiritual parts to release and let go. I know that things get worse before they get better. So I put my faith in that when we're seeing just the craziness that we've seen this year. The absolute horror of how Black people are treated by police. I actually come from a police family. So how do I process? How do I deal with that? I did an episode putting out there into the world. I very much am related to someone that is a white cop who has killed Black people. The state of Louisiana or the city of New Orleans, I'm not quite sure. I'd have to go back and look at my paperwork. Paid out. I can't think of the right term right now, but like a reparations kind of funding to those family members of the people that he killed way back before this was in my lifetime. This was in the late 70s, early 80s. So this is I'm not surprised by, this has actually been my whole life of knowing that these racial issues exist. And it's another reason why I have decided to maintain being estranged from my family. When we stand up in family systems to say, hey, things are wrong, I think it gives us muscles to go out into the world and see what's wrong, but to also know we have to take care of ourselves on an individual basis to be able to fight those good fights. We have to pick our battles, and we have to also have some boundaries with our empathy. I saw a quote recently that was, empathy without boundaries is death. And I thought, wow, that really kind of gets at it, that especially those of us with the big hearts and the big empathy. I'm a highly sensitive person. You have a show about empathy. I'd be shocked if you weren't.
Yeah, that's me.
Right? So we're 15 to 20% of the population as highly sensitive people. That's the best guess. So that means 80 to 85% of the people just don't process the world like we do. And in my boundaries work, what I'm helping people do is accept that I can't make someone who's not wired like me process the world exactly like I do. So that becomes a letting go point. Now, I can certainly kind of reach across the aisle, like they say in politics, and have some conversations and some relatability with people who are wired very differently than I am. But the expectation of I can talk enough to make somebody else who has lower empathy than me have higher empathy will just burn me out. So we're learning how to accept some of our fundamental differences as human beings too, while we do the work to kind of expand the minds of people who have that availability. There is an empathy availability in human beings that we can tap into. That's why you do a show. That's why I do a show. But certainly
That's
not
why I have
everybody.
hope.
Yes.
That's why I hold on to hope.
So I do a lot of work with people about functional hope and dysfunctional hope and managing that. Because as highly sensitive people, most of us have stories. I don't know your personal story, but most of us have stories about really, really spending periods of life just throwing hope down holes and getting very burnt out. So I talk a lot about, we've all been taught it's really good to give second chances, but highly sensitive people will give hundreds of chances. It's like we've warped second chances into being something very dysfunctional. So we don't really know how to have a boundary that says, oh, you know what, enough here. Even though I have hope for you, even though I would like you to get healthier, even though I wish we could have deeper conversations, I can recognize that you don't want to do that with me, or you're unwilling to in this lifetime, and I release you. And not in an FU kind of way. Just in okay, I recognize that I'm a certain puzzle piece, and my puzzle piece isn't going to fit for everybody. And that has to be okay. And that helps me be less angry and less hurt in the world.
Yeah. I'd like to unpack that a little bit. Can you share a little bit about your experience with your family and how probably very difficult it was to get to a point where you were able to create that boundary?
Yes. So dysfunction in families is an incredibly difficult thing to sort of rank or rate. And whenever I speak about that, I never want to talk about it in a way of like, well, this is super dysfunction and mine's super dysfunctional and yours is less. But everything has sort of a continuum of intensity. And it doesn't matter whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse in family systems. What I find to be the most destructive qualities is how rigid the system is. Because there's a certain amount of dysfunction in all of our families. All of our families. As human beings, there's a certain amount of dysfunction that's in all of us. It doesn't matter how much work that I do as a human being. I am never going to be perfectly non-dysfunctional. There's going to be a little bit of dysfunction in me because that's just sort of the human condition. But as long as we're working to look at it and to own it, we can do a lot to change and grow out of it. Okay? In the most dysfunctional family systems, there tends to be a severe lack of personal responsibility in the adults. There seems to be a severe lack of availability for an adult to be able to look at another adult and say, I don't know all the things. I probably need to learn a new thing about this.
God, you're breaking my heart.
Am I hitting on some things for you?
Oh, you are. You are indeed. Sorry, keep going though.
So I think in traditional counseling, and my background is certainly clinical. I have a master's degree in counseling and an undergrad in psychology. We miss a lot of the nuance because how the hell is science ever going to test something like that? Like how much rigidity is in a family system? So in a lot of my work, I've leaned, my background is from that strong clinical science-based, evidence-based. And then in my more modern work, the last 10 years, it's been more of sharing this human and spiritual, story to story experience. So that's what I've learned through my career. I've been in mental health since 2006. I'm from New Orleans. So I started being a baby therapist right after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. I went back before the year was out. So my specialties, just to kind of go into that before I go off, have started with addiction. That's where I started my career. Then trauma, grief and loss. And then I moved into highly sensitive people as I started realizing, oh, highly sensitive people, that's what I am. And that's who finds me and works with me. So let's see, let me get back on track. What was I answering for you? Oh, in my own story, my family is extremely rigid. And I often sometimes ask people to go watch The Sopranos when they're processing their dysfunctional family. Because a lot of our families are very much similar in some ways to The Sopranos. We take great holiday photos. We have great holiday parties, and we can have a whole lot of fun with very dysfunctional people. And in some ways, like the way that The Sopranos have great family values for their own families, we can come from family systems that have great values on paper. But then when we pull back the layers and we start really seeing what's going on, there's a whole lot of ego problem. There's a whole lot of authority figure problem. In dysfunctional families, generally somebody is the authority figure. which means the other players in the family system are very much treated like children, even when they're into their 20s and their 30s and their 40s and their 50s. And that really stunts the development of human beings. If I'm 30 years old and I'm still looking to a parent as the authority figure, they tell me how I get to holiday. They get to comment about my life as if I'm still 16 living under their roof and I don't know how to stand up for myself. We wind up having a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, because we're not evolving in a natural way to become who we are. So in dysfunctional family systems, those families often see their children as property and expect them to turn out in the ways that they expect. In healthier family systems, there's a little more freedom there. In healthier family systems and healthier parenting, there's more of an innate understanding of this child doesn't belong to me. This child from day one is passing through me to become their own person. So there's less control issues. There's less rigidity of you must be this version of me. You must fit into this family in this one exact way, or you shall be shunned. And that's an emotional blackmail technique. So the more rigidity in a dysfunctional family system, the more rules there are about what good behavior is and what behavior is unacceptable. There's a lot of flip-flopping. That's my very non-clinical term for what happens in abusive family systems. So in my family system, the way the abuse got flip-flopped was that I am the scapegoat. My whole giant Catholic family system, my mother is one of 6, and I grew up very, very close to those aunts and uncles and all my cousins. There was one of 16 cousins on that side. I had cousins on another side. But in that side of the family, my grandparents died before I was out of high school. They were kind of functionally my parents. And my mom was always sort of irresponsible. My mother is a sociopath. Of course, I didn't know that till I was older. My biological father abandoned me by the time I was 10. And my mother started dating this man that had been accused of molesting his own small toddler children. He had had sexual predator evaluations. They don't do them the same way like they used to. But through the late 80s, they had attached electrodes to his genitals and shown him pictures of children. And as an adult, I was able to read his psychological report as part of the proceedings. And it said that this man was a child sexual predator and should not be with children below the age of 12 ever.
How old were you when he was brought into the picture?
I was 9. My younger sister was 5 years younger than me. And then my other sister was 3 years younger than me. So my siblings began getting molested at the ages of like 4 and 6. And it took a few more years because I was older to groom me. So in my memories were repressed. So my memories did not come back to me. So for my siblings, who I'm also estranged from, they were consciously aware of their abuse while it was happening. I was not. And it wasn't until I was years later teaching other therapists actually about high sensitivity. And I was starting to share my story. You know, for the first half of my career, I did very precisely what therapists were taught because I was so scared that my story, all of my trauma would somehow taint someone else's therapeutic experience.
Sure.
That I worked doubly hard with my own counselors and my own supervisors to make damn sure that my trauma wasn't negatively impacting my clients. So I did not share anything about my story for many years, just as traditional therapists are taught. And then I started sharing my story, teaching professional counselors so that I could test those waters of, okay, as I'm doing this thing that we're taught not to do, because it was my hunch, it felt like my calling to start using my story. That's sort of how I tested it out before using it with clients and with the public. So as I was sharing with some therapists, one of them asked me, why do you think your memories were repressed when your siblings weren't? Well, I was the eldest. I very much mothered my younger siblings, as many of us do. The term is parentification.
Yeah.
So if you were a mini adult because your parents were either abusive or neglectful or just inadequate for whatever reasons, especially as highly sensitive little kids, we often step in to the role to parent our other siblings. So I very much believe that that the big protector in me, I'm very maternal, even though I've decided to not have children. I had felt like such a protector of younger people that had I consciously known that I was being abused sexually, I would have gone to my siblings and found out. And had I found that out as a fiery teenager, I may have snapped and assaulted, if not killed, my parents. I would not be here doing the work that I was doing today. So when that therapist asked me that in front of a room full of people, I had to take a beat. I said, give me a minute. I've never thought about that. That is a fantastic question.
Yeah.
And I took a minute or two and then I gave that answer. And I said, this is honestly my answer. So that's given me a lot of faith. So when you confront a family system, so because I come from a family with a police officer, and New Orleans is a highly unethical place in politics and in police. And I saw it growing up. I knew it.
Who was the police officer?
He was a very close uncle of mine that very much like stepped in as a dad figure that I spent a lot of time with as a child. When you come from a police family, part of why you don't see police family people talk about the racism or confront their family members is because you also grow up getting out of things. So you grow up in a system where for every ticket you get, the police officer gets you out of it. And when that's so normal, that was normalized to me. So that wasn't a second thought to me. It was just what you did until I started in my early 20s going, wait a minute, but that's wrong. Wait, that's not how it's supposed to work. Wait, if this wrong thing gets done, what else is wrong that gets done behind the scenes? And you're not allowed to say those things. So there are these subconscious contracts, that's my phrase for them, that develop when we grow up around dysfunction. And some of the subconscious contracts that I grew up with were, you just don't question the authority figures. You just don't question the police officer. You do things that they want. You please other people. I am a recovering people pleaser. I was raised to be a good Southern girl. And you don't rock the boat. You don't show people anger. You just go along and you be hospitable and you be friendly and sweet. And that is the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you were dying of depression on the inside. You just show up and plaster a smile on your face and act as if you're fine to make other people comfortable. So healing is unraveling and untwisting all that dysfunction that makes us play small and makes us miserable within ourselves. So what I did was I didn't follow the rules of my family.
Yeah.
So my memories came back to me all of a sudden one night when the man that I was with at the time, he was my first husband. It was before we got married. He very innocently, the way people who live together or are married do, he tried to initiate sex with me in the middle of the night when I was kind of groggy and sleepy. And that was very similar to how I had been sexually abused. So I woke up like lifting myself out of bed, like something had caught on fire, and jumped out of bed. And just, I knew in every fiber of my being, these memories flooded back and I knew it was real.
Wow.
And my brain, because our brains are magnificent things like of how they're designed. My brain still would not give me every memory back. So I mostly have memories of like my childhood bedroom door opening and closing as he came in and left. But it was wordless abuse. Okay. And so that's a huge subconscious contract when you're not even ever told, don't tell anybody about this. It doesn't even have to be said. That's how much control happens in these families.
Right.
So my mind kept that from me to take care of me, I believe, so I could finish school, so I could get all the way to where I am now. Really doing the show. It's been a spiritual practice. But I broke the rules. The rules in my family as they were set were that I were to go to the police officer in my family and he would just handle it. Which very honestly meant probably someone would just take him out. Someone would take his life. And I didn't want that. I wanted to go through the proper public channels. I wanted other victims, if there were some, to be able to hear that this happened, that this was a real thing, And I wanted everyone to have to deal with it in the light of day, not with some more family dysfunction.
Right.
So my entire family was very upset with me. And that's what happens when you break a big family secret, whatever it is. More often than not, you're scapegoated. So I'm officially the family scapegoat. I'm the black sheep. And when there's abuse in a family system, I think of it like there's a beach ball of responsibility. And the abusers, the people that are in charge of keeping children safe, when they don't know how to hold their own responsibility ball, because some people do. Some people very much accidentally partner with someone who hurts their kids. And when they find out, they very much know how to look at their children and go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What do you need? We're going to figure this out together. And they fly into corrective action. And that's mostly what we need as children of adults. That's mostly what children who are children right now need from adults. We don't really need adults to do everything right. But when they get it wrong, we really would all benefit from more adults who can sit down and look at us and go, wow, I really dropped the ball here. This was my job to keep you safe and I didn't do it. I'm so sorry. Let's clean it up to the best of our ability now. And in very dysfunctional family systems, they don't know how to do that. They double down. They dig their heels in on we're not wrong. And that flip-flop happens. So instead of being mad at the abuser, the entire family system is mad at me because I made them deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's very hard. That's why we need support. I don't know that I would have made it through without my healer, my therapist, my life coach, who really has become like a second mother. And that's what science will never get about healing work, whether you call me a therapist or a life coach. I've had somebody go, I don't care if you're a truck driver, Nikki, you help me figure this stuff out. And that's kind of the truth of it. But we need people that can see us and that can do the right thing by us and can hold some space for us and really support us when we come from incredibly toxic family systems.
Right.
So there are stories in my family that I actually went no contact because I actually asked my uncle to kill him and he said no. So there are stories to kind of cover up, to always look like they're in the right. There's a severe lack of ownership. And we can see that narcissism in someone like Trump. So this year has been very hard on my clients and the people in my world who have narcissistic parents. Because here we are sort of in this world where the nation has had this narcissistic parent. And we can very much see that there's no putting evidence in front of someone who has that dysfunction. There's no amount of evidence you can put in front of someone like that they go, oh, shoot, you're right. I got it wrong. Let me change my way of thinking now. That is the dysfunction. That is the narcissistic problem. And family systems can become narcissistic-like, where they all participate in just, no, we're good, and the one who says that we did something wrong is bad. And they shame. And very much over the years, no one in my family has reached out. In the last few years, I've reconciled with a cousin but she's done her own tremendous work to have tremendous boundaries and to grow and to learn how to let go of people pleasing and to be more of who she is in the world and who she was always meant to be, separate from our dysfunction in the family. And so she and I are safe for each other. And that's where a lot of boundaries work sits. And that's why I mentioned managing hope, because some of the hardest years of my life were when I held on to hope very hard. Very much thinking that if I just explained things enough, if I sent enough books to some of my family members, if I sent enough podcasting episodes, if they could just get it, there's got to be some magical formula where you can unlock it and somebody can get it. And that's where we can really, really keep ourselves in the pain, in the abandonment wound, and dig that wound even deeper. Instead of being able to let go of that and sort of see the writing on the wall. And in healthy boundaries, we don't need steel doors. We can still have walls that have windows and that have doors. There's a part of me that will always be a little bit open to, if my siblings or if some of my family members do some of the work, I would maybe give it a shot, but they'd have to really show me they're doing the work, not just give me a lot of lip service.
Yeah.
And I think that's our hard-earned wisdom. And that's part of why I do the show, because it felt like so much was hard-earned wisdom on my part. And I believe we all will have our hard-earned wisdom, but I don't think it has to be as hard as it is. I feel like most of us on the wellness path, on the seeker's path, man, we feel like we're in a boat alone, trying to paddle through, looking for other people who really want to paddle. And I think there are some ways that we can kind of throw some oars to each other and say, hey, I figured out this piece. Is there anything here for you to learn from? Because you'll do it very differently. No one who listens to my show or works with me will do life in the same ways. And that's a very important thing. I want people to be able to disagree with me. I want people to be able to say, Nikki, I fundamentally agree with that. Cool, you get to. We're not enemies if you disagree with me.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I relate so much to a lot of what you shared, and I just want to say that I'm sorry that you had to go through that. It's like I think about like sensitive kids, right, growing up and in houses, and I've talked about this. My parents, I think, certainly my father is a narcissist. My mother definitely have those tendencies. What I find so heartbreaking and also beautiful in your story, and it's the same in mine. It's our sensitivity being this thing that saves us. It's like it's a survival mechanism, right?
Yes.
And I didn't, like you, I started learning and doing the work and coming out of it, but it was like a slow trickle because it was just, I needed that time. I needed that space. I needed that buffer, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I'm so thankful that you're at a place now where because, when you said like, why can't they see? Like, why can't they understand? Like, I think I'm still there sometimes where I feel like, God, like, because my mother looks at this work I do and she thinks it's negativity. She thinks it's bad. And I'm just like, oh, like I want them to understand, but like, I know that that's not the energy I need to expend. I need to shift that, I need to look at things differently and create those boundaries with myself, as you were talking about before. But anyways, I'm blathering, but I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that. It's a devastating story, but I'm grateful you're here.
Well, you're so very welcome. I'm grateful I'm here too. And I'm sorry that you have that experience too. And I wish it was not a common story.
Yeah.
But many of us have not just one narcissistic parent, but two. And that's mind blowing because it's crazy to think that, it's easy to look at narcissism and think, well, two narcissists together would just eat each other, right? That can't work.
Right.
But actually an overt narcissist and a covert narcissist are often married with children.
Right.
Often. And so many of us have fallen into the category. So if we have two parents who can't take responsibility, this is my theory about high sensitivity. It's as if because we can see the ball of responsibility that they don't hold, we showed up in the family system like, I'll hold all of it. I will hold so much responsibility. So highly sensitive people, we tend to carry way too much responsibility in our family systems, in trying to make intimacy, like work with another person and trying to make other people get it. Because we will try to make other people get it while other people really aren't even trying to get it.
Right.
And that's where we really spin our wheels and burn up our energy.
Right.
That's why it's such a powerful thing to me to talk about dysfunctional hope. Anybody I've ever talked about that with, they're like, wait a minute. I've only been taught that hope is 100% great and awesome, and I should have as much of it as possible. And for the average person who isn't highly sensitive, maybe that totally fits and works fine without too much consequence. But for a highly sensitive person, that's related to people who don't take responsibility for themselves. Because narcissism is a problem of, I'm great. I'm awesome. There is no problem with me. There is nothing for me to learn because I already know all the things. So even by you trying to explain something to me, if I'm a narcissist, you're already wrong because you can't possibly know anything that I don't know because I know all the things. And that is the catch-22 of that as a real disorder in this world that's growing more and more and more of it. So I think managing our hope as highly sensitive people pleasers is going to be increasingly important, especially as the world and technology has the ability to show us so much pain and so much of what's wrong in the world. I think we've got to work double time to acknowledge that stuff and to do our advocacy work, but also to pull ourselves out of it and really go, okay, what's beautiful today? Even when that's just, oh, this flower. I have my Thanksgiving cactus that's blooming for me early right now. You know, throughout this, I've been looking at the buds, and when the world is too much, I go over to my plant and I say, hello, Christmas cat or Thanksgiving cactus. And I just spend a little minute watching this beautiful plant bloom. And I've tried to get this sucker to bloom this much for the last 5 years. And this year is giving me its biggest bloom. So if I can look at that, that's what my latest episode was about, actually. If I can look at that, you know, that's what will restore and take care of my heart instead of looking at another 3 hours of Twitter and Facebook and what's going wrong in the world. We have to really align with people who are doing this good work as a way for us to recharge and learn how to let go of the things that really don't serve us, so we really can hold the things that can serve ourselves in the world.
Yeah. How have you sort of emotionally wrapped your head around or explained to clients or listeners this idea around boundaries being a selfish thing, especially in the context of families, right? Like there's such a enmeshed dysfunction, right, in families that, you know, tell us we need to be this, we need to be this thing, we need to be this thing, we need to, like, you know, step in line, right? Like all those things. Like there's so much of that is in family, but also we talked about it before in culture and society, all of it. Like how have you helped people through like feeling that like, oh, I'm setting these boundaries and I'm feeling like I'm being selfish, or my family's calling me selfish for doing so?
I think it has to come from a lens of radical acceptance. So if I'm radically accepting that, okay, I'm 15 to 20% of the population, that genuinely makes me an oddball. I'm an odd duck if 80 to 85% of the people are wired differently. So that, I think, starts to become its own permission of really having to have a boundary. Because until we have that awareness, most of us are trying to do life like the 80%, right?
Right.
So that begins the permission of, okay, I really am different, instead of what's wrong with me, that I'm not like everybody else. So to do boundaries work, we have to start working on the inner critic. And if you come from narcissism, none of us got away from that without a harsh inner critic. None of us. So to be able to deal with that when that family system looks at you and goes, oh, so you're not coming to the holiday this year. You've come 39 years of your life and you want to do one on your own, and I'm going to tell you you're selfish. You've got to have the inner critic tight with yourself. And we've got to have some boundaries work around, okay, if your parent's narcissistic, they don't give approval. They only give approval when you're doing 100% exactly what they want. So you got to come from a place of radical honesty with yourself too, of approval's not available. If I'm giving the example of I'm not going to go to the holiday this year and family wants me to, then you got to be really tight with your inner critic so that when mom says, well, oh yes, you and all this empathy, all this self-care, yep, you're selfish, whether it's directly or indirectly, like just the eye roll can tell us that, right?
Yeah.
Then we have to be able to have really strong self-talk within ourselves that says to my own inner child or my own inner psyche, That's right, Nikki. I absolutely get to take care of myself. It is my job to take care of myself. The phrase that I use that you're welcome to borrow, use, steal from me, however we want to put it, is if I can't be ish about myself, who the hell else is going to be? It is the healthiest thing in the world for me to be ish about myself. When I take care of myself, that means my friends, my chosen family, they get to melt into the reality that I am working hard to take care of myself. That means I am not going to be a burden to them. That means when they need my help, I am restoring myself enough to where I can create some space to help my friends. The more ish I am about myself, the more I can show up for other people, not less. But it is going to be more on my terms. It's my life. Shouldn't it be?
I think so.
Exactly. And so we have to face that the people who want us to who don't want us to have boundaries the most are the ones that benefit the most by us not having them. So it's a lot of acceptance work.
Yeah.
And it really is embodying that I do get to be ish about myself. I really saw this. I'm going to get married for the third time. Okay. To a partner that is finally a fantastic match for me.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there was a moment with him that really summed this up, where one of his childhood friends was realizing that we were really a good match and we're going to stay together for the duration. And he asked his friend, my partner's name is Chris, well, what's your number one priority? Like, now that you're in a couple? And he said, myself. And then his friend looked at me like, oh, well, what do you have to say about that? Like I was going to balk. And I said, I wouldn't be with him otherwise. And he explained, and I expect Nikki's top priority to be herself too. And then together we come together. Of course we lean on each other. Of course we help each other. But of course we are supposed to take care of ourselves. I call it life swimming. Like we all must learn how to swim. If we don't all learn how to individually swim and the boat goes down, then we're going to be screaming at other people to come save us. And then two people are likely to drown. It's the putting on your own oxygen mask first, like they say on the airplanes.
Yep.
It's really embodying that. And I promise people who are just starting that work, it does feel foreign and it is going to feel false and phony. I have an episode on my Patreon. It's not on the main feed, but it's called The Bitch Hat. Because that's a big part of how I started my own boundaries work, was I'd have to kind of, almost like pull up my big girl panties kind of moment with myself of like, all right, I'm going to do this. And I realized that the people in my world that were the hardest to say no to were the ones that took a little too much from me. So of course they weren't going to clap for me like, oh, wow, look at Nikki having a boundary. That's awesome. So I had to let go of that sneaky expectation. I talk about expectations in my course too. So letting go of that expectation is really freeing to go, no, of course they're going to try to shame me. Because when we really step back, what we have going for us in our healing when we come from a dysfunctional family is consistency. People who are truly like locked into their dysfunction, they're consistently that way. If we just deal with that consistency, we'll feel way less crazy and less drained. But it does. So the episode of The Bitch Hat is I would picture myself putting on this hat like, okay, they're just going to think I'm a bitch. And I'd have to really work with my inner self and go, I have to be okay with this. I'm not a bitch. I get to be self-respecting in this life. I get to have limits. That's another thing about being a highly sensitive person. We may genuinely need to have more limits with our energy than the average person. And I've had to do work to accept that I have to accept that and know that about myself. And the trap that we fall into as highly sensitive people is we walk up to other people first and we go, hey, will you accept my sensitivity and my high empathy and the boundaries and limitations that I need? I need you to accept it first so I don't feel like such an asshole. Then I'll get okay with it.
Right.
And oh my gosh, that is such a big failing. So a lot of my work is helping people turn that around and go, actually, when I let go of that expectation and I help myself get grounded in, I want their acceptance, but I don't need it. I really need to accept who I am within myself. Then I can present it to other people with a much different energy. Instead of this, oh, I'm sorry, this is going to be a pain in your ass. Like, I'm not going to do this thing, and I know you're going to get upset. Stage laying that we do. Then I can come up and go, guess what? Like, if I'm trying to set a boundary with a mom that I know leans a little narcissistic and she is just not going to be happy hearing I'm not coming home from the holidays, then it's on me to learn how to present that differently instead of walking right up to that moment again with trepidation, with fear, acting as if I'm a little kid. I can really stand up for my inner child from my adult wise woman part, or if you're a man, from your wise man part, or if you're gender neutral, from whatever part you want to name.
Yeah.
And then I can say, guess what? I'm doing this really great thing for myself. I have this planned for me. It's different than any other holiday. And I know you're going to be upset, Mom, but I'm sorry about that part of it. But this is me doing this thing for me. I would love it if you were happy for me. And that's a completely different vibe. Even if I get the same sort of, excuse my clinical term, but poo-pooing on my idea or on my boundary setting, I'm showing up for me with the energy that I want from other people. That's true empowerment. From that energy is how I've gotten more people in my life sort of on board with who I am and how I am, because I truly am on board with how I am and who I am.
Nikki, I love listening to you. It's very clear that you do this stuff for a living, obviously. And I think the listeners are going to really enjoy this episode. There's just so much here, so much wisdom, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I want to. Can you help me understand a little bit about when you started your podcast? Like what was going into the naming of it? Because it's called Emotional Badass. Like what is an emotional badass? Like what does that mean to you?
An emotional badass is a term that came to me intuitively when I was in a session with a client many, many years ago. Gosh, probably, I don't know how many years before doing the podcast. I was sitting with an incest survivor, and she was very, very wounded. And I had seen about 4 similar clients that week that just were carrying such a heaviness, such a brokenness, that something about the moment struck me. And I said, okay, well, first of all, in that moment was when I first started sharing my own story. And I realized, especially if we come from incest, we don't really have people to see as a touchstone of getting all the way through the other side of that.
Right.
So when we're talking in audio, you can't see me, but the feedback I get a lot is I'm vibrant. I'm happy. I have happy energy, even when I'm talking about really heavy things. And that's not me putting on for my audience or for my clients. It's genuinely the work that I've done to be able to be in that space. So let's see. Oh gosh, did I just lose my train of thought? Wait, what am I answering?
Emotional badass.
Yes. Thank you. So after seeing like a couple people that just look like, like kicked dogs, like just like a wet dog out in the rain that's been kicked kind of energy, something in me was firing up. And I kind of said to her, hey, do you know anybody that's been through similar abuse with their families and feels kind of okay to you? Nope. So as I started bringing this to my clients I started saying, well, what if you do know somebody that you think kind of has it together, who was also molested by a family member? And then they'd look at me and then go, this happened to you too? I'd say, yeah, you're not alone in this. I said, what if you're more of an emotional badass? You realize what you've been through? And when I said that term to her and then to the other clients, it was like their spine got straighter and taller.
Hmm.
And I thought, somehow this is not getting through to people, that the things that we fear the most are actually the things we've already survived. We are strong beyond measure. When you have survived, and it doesn't mean, and look, let me be clear about this too. I think a lot of people hear sexual abuse or physical abuse and really get wrapped up in the moments of that abuse. And for sure, we have to do healing about the actual physicality of the abuse in those moments. But those moments are far less impactful than the emotional blackmail that happens around all of that abuse, than the gaslighting, than the looking like a family that is a pretty picture, when it's extremely destructive behind the scenes. The crazy making gaslighting qualities of that, of people pleasing, of saying, yeah, I'm fine, when you feel like your heart is broken and you're having a heart attack. Yeah. Learning how to unravel all of the nuance of that is much more of the work than actually healing from the moment someone sexually violated me.
Yeah, the moment feels like a symptom of the bigger issue. Yeah.
Yes, because the moment ends. That tension in the air, that's what I've had to realize in my own post-traumatic stress story. Even in my birth, so I was raised Catholic. They gave me last rites. I almost died at birth. So my little nervous system has been in fight or flight or freeze just from the tension of the miserable adults that were around me growing up.
Little sensitive baby.
Yes. And for all highly sensitive people, that's one of my main questions is what was not what happened to you. What was the primary energy that you were in most days of your life during your development? Because it's different. And it's I'm not a therapist that gets wrapped up in, oh my gosh, everything is your childhood. But it's very different. If someone has even like a sexual assault at an adult age, it's very different. We're a fully formed adult when that happens. It's horrific. It's traumatic for sure. But you're already formed into the human being that you are when that happens. Surely there's consequences and there are effects. But you're you, and then that thing happens. It's very different when we look at what happened to us as we were developing into the human we are.
Right.
That's why we spend time as therapists, because sometimes there's a beef between therapists and coaches. Like coaches take you forward and therapists get you lost in the history. And it really is not about getting lost in the history. It's about really understanding the nuance of that history so you can understand what you need to do to be able to go forward.
Yep. I love that so much. It's great. Thank you for sharing that. I love the name Emotional Badass. It's wonderful. I mean, I think, we are emotional people, right? Like that's what we are. That's what a human is. We are emotional. We contain this tapestry of emotion, and it behooves us to look at them, to be curious, to figure out what's going on with them, right?
Yes, and that is the essence of the show. And when people work with me in any capacity, what I'm saying is, my goodness, we have been talk about a flip-flop of dysfunction. The person that sits in front of me, especially for my men, like I really love my highly sensitive men. I love my highly sensitive women too, but I love my highly sensitive men, especially those of you that are 40 and older, because my goodness, did you guys grow up in messages of toxicity? Of you better not ever have a feeling, or you're a big giant wuss. Some of you got physically assaulted because of being emotional. So the strength that it takes to come from that messaging and sit and emote vulnerably with another human being, that's strength. Pretending like you don't have emotion over the whole course of a life, that doesn't take a whole lot of strength. Emoting takes strength. So maybe this is pre-COVID, but I started doing this years ago, and it's a game changer. It's a game changer for me as a human being. anything can make me cry in public. Now, COVID, we've got masks on, we're 6 feet apart, all that. But if somebody had a baby and I see that baby smile, I am liable to tear up from the beauty coming off of that baby. If I see a pregnant woman looking like goddess Mother Earth, I can tear up on the beauty of that. And instead of hiding it, years ago I started saying, if I'm checking out with the barista, getting a coffee, but I'm starting to cry, and people look at me oh no, what happened? I started saying, oh, I'm fine. I cry because I'm an emotional person. I'm extremely strong too, while tears are going down my face. And you can see people get confused for a second, wait, what the hell is she? What?
Tears translate to weakness.
Yes, and then you kind of see them yeah, hell yeah, cry.
Nice.
And that's exactly what I mean about we're in charge of sort of setting the stage. And we need to learn how to stop cowering and hiding our sensitivity. If we really want our sensitivity to be accepted in the bigger world, it has to come from us accepting it as who we are and digging our heels in a little bit. In that moment, for me, that's an advocacy moment of, yeah, I'm sensitive and I'm emotional and I'm not going to shrink back from that. And you, other person watching me, you don't need to shrink back from it either. Be right here in this moment with me. See, emotion is okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we all did that, that would boost our self-esteem. Our inner child, our inner psyche would hear that self-worth statement from ourselves to ourselves. Our inner self would see it doesn't matter if other people receive me or disregard me or shame me. Damn it, I stand up for myself. And the other sensitive people in the world, even if someone shames me or rolls their eyes or thinks I'm ridiculous, cool. I don't need your acceptance. You do you. High five. All you're doing is telling me that our puzzle pieces don't fit. In fact, I appreciate that at this point in my development. When someone gives me rejection, I meet that with gratitude. I say within myself, thank you so much for rejecting me. I don't have to give this a lot of time or a lot of energy. Thank you for showing me that we don't fit early on. And I can move on and keep space open for people that really do fit.
I love that. I think that should be a shirt. Thank you for, what was it? Thank you for
rejection. Thank you for the rejection.
On. Yeah, I love that. I want that in a shirt. Make it happen, listeners. I think about your story. I think about the story of many of my guests and my story, and it's beautiful. It's heartbreaking, and then I think about children, right? And how we can do better about educating them on these matters. Is it a matter of just having safer, more loving families and parents, or is it that, and then can we teach these concepts to kids?
I believe we can. I believe we can absolutely have empathy training.
Yeah.
I think we could head off a lot of sociopathy, a lot of narcissism. I think we could head it off at the pass if empathy was celebrated, if empathy was really taught. Over the years, while I don't work with children directly, I am often coaching parents on creative solutions, especially if they notice within their child that maybe there is a little bit of pre-narcissism there, or a little dysfunctional selfishness instead of that more functional selfishness that we were discussing earlier.
Yeah.
You can really guide that out, so but we have to know that that's what we're doing, and we have to also practice it as adults. So if we're mindful people, but our kids are hearing us shame Trumpers, then they're not getting that empathy piece. And so it's less about, kids watch and listen more so to the things we don't want them to hear and listen to than the things we actually tell them directly.
Right.
And that would be part of parenting training, mindful parenting, really having to live those values and show them. I also think that, part of why I did the show was because I was that young, super depressed girl wanting answers. as a teenager. I couldn't understand why I was so depressed because my family ate dinner together every night and we went to church. I was told that's what a good family was. So I didn't understand what was wrong with me, that I was so unhappy. So unhappy.
Yeah.
So it's teaching energy. It's valuing these things and really showing them.
Yeah.
And we can impact children too. I also think that kids are not going to be, for all the negatives about social media and the internet that are certainly out there, I could make a list a mile long. The benefit of that is that the kids now can Google anything. So kids at 8 can Google, I'm sad, and have other people show up that are sad. So I think that incredible loneliness that a lot of us that are in our maybe late 30s and beyond felt, I think that is lessening. That is lessening because kids can connect to other people more often than not, unless they're in some sort of seriously chained to the wall kind of abusive situation. They should be able to get way more resources than any of us could have possibly found during our development.
Yeah, I hope so. I've been thinking about it a lot lately because I'm working on haven't really shared this on the podcast yet because it's still kind of in development, but I'm working on a feelings book for kids, a picture book, and I'd like to do an empathy one as well. Just because I just my heart breaks for the little sensitive guy or gal, who is in an environment that feels maybe unsafe or that is not supportive in that way. And I also want to, empower, like you said, parents to have tools to do it themselves. Obviously I'm not a therapist, but I just think there needs to be more. And it's why I started Feely Human. It's I want to get in classrooms and stuff, eventually as, once coronavirus sort of wanes, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I kind of mourn, I grieve a little bit, and I wonder if you can relate to this. I grieve a little bit of a childhood that maybe could have been better, or certainly grieving having to go through anorexia and suicidal stuff and all that stuff. I grieve that, and it not until my 30s, and I'm putting a judgment on myself in that sentence. So I take back that sort of sentiment, but my 30s is really when I started doing the work. And gosh, I would have loved to do the work in my 20s, right? And yes, I'm judging myself in this moment, but I also we need to start better. We need to empower better early.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think mindful people, I very much believe are trying to. And I think it's that sad reality of it. And people who don't value that just won't. But hopefully those kids can find your podcast and my podcast.
Yeah.
And find other communities that lift them up. I'm with you. If we really valued and addressed giving emotional education to young people, the world would change. The world would change drastically.
Yeah.
Because that is the root of all of it. And we could get to a place where we're making a fraction of the Trumps and the average narcissists and the sociopaths out there. Because we need human connection. We are tribal people. We need to be able to relate to each other. We need emotional muscles of even being able to agree to disagree. Really being able to do that.
That's critical thinking, yeah.
Ooh, critical thinking. And we haven't valued that a whole lot in our educations. So I think we can do tons of stuff there. But I also think it's that balance of we have to also kind of, for your own healing, for my own healing, is go into that when we can, and then also go into who is doing good work in the world so that you restore and don't drain sort of your soul or your energy reserves to be able to do that good work. Because that's a very important piece of it for us to model as sensitive people, that first off, we all grieve it. And let me say this for the record. My favorite work is uniting families. My favorite work is uniting families, is helping them come together, put down their individual dysfunctions and connect and be able to have safer, deeper, healthier relationships. But the other side of that work is being able to recognize when that's not available, to be able to let go of that, to be able to move into what is available and do that work. Thank goodness, like, you've had some boundaries with, your own process so that you can give energy to such a work as that book, which will impact the next person. And then they will grow it. So I really believe that healing is so exponential.
Yeah.
So exponential. And I also think it just takes decades on the planet. That's part of what I've recognized getting to 40 is that, in our 20s, I just don't think we're far enough away in time and experience from our childhoods to be able to have enough perspective on it.
Yeah, you may be right. Yeah.
Do you feel it like coming into focus, not just because you're doing the work, but because there's just more breathing room?
I think breathing room is a beautiful way to put it. I feel I think for the first time in my life, Nikki, I'm honoring myself. I think there was a lot of time where I was just not, I was kind of ruled by my limiting beliefs. And, now I can actively say, like, hey, known, like, this is a thing you're good at. Like, honor that and pursue that and be bold in your passions and be bold in your activism and be bold in the thing you value, which is your heart and connection and empathy. And these are beautiful things. And I do have to tell myself that from time to time and remind myself of that because of those limiting beliefs. But I'm not ruled by them as I once was. And that feels really good.
It's beautiful. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Because I do. I think most of us as sensitive people have gone through a period where we didn't honor ourselves, didn't know the first thing about what that meant.
Yeah, indeed.
And, when I was listening to your podcast to decide to come on and finding you, one of the things that I really liked, I don't even remember what you were talking about. Because beyond whatever topic you were talking about or whatever person you were interviewing, you made some comment about, well, I used to think this, and in gathering more information and experience, I now think this. And I thought that is so much of what I believe we need to repair the world, is just people modeling that. Do you realize how much permission you modeling that gives other people to go, oh, maybe my thoughts about this could change if I added some different information, and it's okay for me to be open to that.
I've got goosebumps and thank you for saying that and listening. That's everything to me. I mean, it is in our, I've said it again and again, we grow in connection with others, right? Like, that's how we learn that's how we shed our biases, our artifice, all of it, like, is being open to that, is having an open heart. And that place doesn't come naturally. That place is uncomfortable. That place is maybe challenging our ego. That place is whatever it is for you. It's sensitive, it feels weird, but it's necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you were asking me, like, what does emotional badass mean? Like, if people come and listen to my show, it's not an easy show. Some people describe my episodes as healthy gut punches. Because I don't pull punches. Like, I am all about personal responsibility, because when we own our personal responsibility, that to me is how we feel freer in our own bodies and within whatever craziness is in the world. And when I feel freer, I have more to give all of my advocacy.
Yeah.
And move my goals forward and what I want for the world. So if you have victim mentality, you will hate my show. If you don't want to face like the real things, won't like my show, but it is really for people who want to shed the layers and really own their power, even if that scares them. Because we each have power. We really do. And pulling back the layers of dysfunction so that we can go, well, what might my power be? Other people will shame us for that because they're not stepping into their own. So we really work on that inner critic as an emotional badass so that we can walk this healing, growth, expansive path for ourselves and for each other. When I end the show, I say, my tagline is where Moxie meets mindful. That I'm an emotional badass, you're an emotional badass, and together we are where Moxie meets mindful. So I think as sensitive people, we're not delicate. We are not delicate. We are strong. We are very, very strong. And that is my challenge to the highly sensitive.
Yeah. Yeah. Love all that. Love, 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 love. Nikki, we always kind of start to wrap up the show talking about our empathy heroes. So folks in our lives who are deeply empathetic, compassionate, feely people. People on the show, guests have also named characters from stories they love or movies. I'm going to go first to give you a moment to think about yours. So my empathy heroes this week are, so I'll back up. I recently just like 5 days ago launched a Patreon page for the first time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm doing this show. It's a monthly podcast. I have Feely Human, which I'm trying to grow and sort of launch. And I also have a day job and I'm very busy and I just want to do more of this work. And I want to have accountability in the Patreon. And I also want to challenge myself in some ways. So yeah, I started it about 5 days ago and I wanted to just shout out my first Patreon supporters. I have 9 already, which is great. So Jen, Suzanne, Jess, Whitney, Megan, Becky, Claudia, Michelle, let's see, make sure I got everyone. Let's see, Michelle, and Sarah. So, those folks, those lovely feely humans are my empathy heroes this week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for supporting, the Patreon. And if you're curious listeners, it's at patreon.com/feelyhuman where you can check that out. But, yeah, my empathy heroes this week.
I love that. Well, I can jump on that train too. I can say that I've got a Patreon too. We've been working on it for about 2 years, and all of the patrons there are definitely my empathy heroes. I know it looks like to most people, you just kind of record something and slap it up there as a podcaster, but it is so much work behind the scenes. And if you have a full-time job too, yes, it is so much work. So those empathy heroes that I have on my Patreon too, they really do help support the show and encourage and keep it on track. And it's a priceless gift. So thank you to your Patreon people and my Patreon people too, empathy heroes. Lisa Tahir is a main empathy hero for me. She was kind of the healer. We all have to find a healer that really clicks with us. And we don't always do that right out of the gate. It takes a few. It's probably one of my most downloaded episodes is how to find a healthy healer, because I think it is so hard for us to connect as highly sensitive people that can feel so much. So she has been like a second mother to me, and kind of held space for me. And she has her own show called All Things Therapy. You would love speaking with her, by the way. Y'all would be a nice match. So she has held some space for me to really see me in my worst moments and to love me through it. And that really showed me how to love myself even through my own worst moments. I think of Maya Angelou as one of my spiritual mothers. So she is an empathy hero for me. I think of her a lot as if she's standing behind me with her hand on my shoulder when I need support. Those are my empathy heroes. Let's see. Maybe my poodle Gusto. I'm a big believer that our pets are sort of our representatives of what unconditional love really is.
Oh, indeed. I mean, I have 2 dogs, 2 horses. Animals mean the world to me.
Are you an animal empath?
I am. I mean, I was my partner, Jessica, we've been married for a bit over 10 years. And so I married into horses. She was like a 4-H girl, and I used to ride with her, but horses in particular, I don't ride anymore, but they pick up on everything you're feeling.
Huh?
Right. So you have to like really check yourself. Like, am I holding anxiety in my body? Am I expressing some sort of fear about working with them? Right. Because they're, 1,500-pound beasts, So you have to really be mindful of that. And then dogs, I love dogs. I went on a run with our rescue, Maddie, this morning, and they're the best.
Yeah. So they're my empathy heroes. Yeah. I've got
Gusto, the puddle, the poodle.
Gusto, the big giant poodle. Yes. He's our show mascot too. But I think I've gotten a lot. Of course, I've had other pets over the years, as I'm not a youngster so much anymore. But yeah, I think all my pets have been empathy heroes to really model for me what unconditional love is for myself, because they love me even on my worst days.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're tasked to do, is learn how to love ourselves on our worst days so we get through them and have more better days. We deserve that.
Yeah, we do. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Aw, thank you so much.
Yeah. So, Nikki, where can the Feely humans out there learn more about the work you do and connect with you?
The easiest spot is emotionalbadass.com. That is the website for the show. We have a little store there too. If you want to buy an Emotional Badass sweatshirt, those are there. That'll link you to my coaching website. My coaching website is NikkiEisenhauer.com, but it's hard to spell my last name, so easier to find me on emotionalbadass.com. And I do Instagram. That's kind of, I think, where you and I found each other.
Yeah.
But we do Facebook. Got a little team going. We've been building. That's actually our next Patreon goal, is to try to hit a certain number so that we can add a production assistant to the team. And you can come sign up for my newsletters, so we're not obnoxious with them. We try to get one out a month. Sometimes we don't, but we don't do more than that. So if you want to come get a highly sensitive person newsletter, you can come sign up for any of that on emotionalbadass.com.
Amazing. Well, listeners, all of those links will be in the show notes for this episode. Nikki, thank you so much for being here on You Me Empathy.
You are so very, very welcome. Thank you so much for having me and holding such sweet space for both of us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You Me Empathy.